What's going on, everybody? We're back, Mild Sauce Radio, streaming Saturdays. I am Jake Krez, and I'm here with the always interesting discovery god himself.
What's up?
Steve Breit. What's going on, Steve?
I'm doing well. Another Saturday.
Another Saturday.
Another beautiful day. Another music afternoon.
It's still freezing in Chicago, but we're keeping it warm in the studio today, streaming Saturdays. We just got done with the three-piece morning show this morning. I'm apparently getting some FaceTime today this week around with, so I'm joining Steve in front of the camera this week. What's going on? Steve, if you guys all know, has been bringing us the hottest rock music from around Chicago and beyond for the last few weeks. We're now on episode 6.
Yep.
We're veterans now. It's actually going. So what's going on, man?
All right. So episode 6. I think last week's heavy episode was pretty fun. But I wanted to change things up. I didn't want to keep it like in that dirgy, heavy vibe. So I was thinking what to do for this week. And if I had my shit together a little bit better, I think I would have had some forethought and maybe done a Valentine's Day themed episode last week, but I'm not that clever. So
So this week in hindsight, I mean, it was in the middle of the week. So
exactly. Yeah. It's a little tough, but kind of keep it in that frame of mind. I never want to look backwards. So this week we're going to look at maybe songs of faith and devotion or lust and passion, the yin and the yang, the good and the bad. Like I said, I didn't want to do a love song episode after the fact. And generally speaking, that's not very cool either. So like I said, here we are. We're going to play with strong emotion. It's going to be all Chicago area bands, and we're going to be dipping back and forth from new stuff to early 2000s, 90s, 80s, maybe even a little bit. We're going to be bouncing around all over the map. So I think this will be a fun, eclectic episode, and that's the plan for this afternoon.
All right. I mean, it sounds like we got a lot going on. What exactly is happening with our radio right now? I don't know. So we're going to jump into music right off the bat. I know every week also we have Steve brings us a beer, a T-shirt. We kind of tied this whole thing together real tight.
Yep.
So what do we got this week?
All right. So this week, it wouldn't be the Saturday afternoon on Mild Sauce if there wasn't at least one little hiccup going on. So I had a beer all picked out. Went to the store today, and they didn't have any of it in the coolers. So
of course, right.
We're not going to drink cold beer on a Saturday afternoon, or we're not going to drink warm beer on a Saturday afternoon. So did a little bit of an audible. Keeping it local, we are drinking Billy Goat Tavern IPA. So this is by Baderbrow, so local brewery. Tying in with, the institution, the Billy Goat Tavern. So
actually, I didn't know. I knew that they had their own beer, but I wasn't aware that it was a situation where they sold it outside of the place.
I think I'd seen it like once or twice before, but it's not very ubiquitous around the city, so it wasn't on top of mind. But seeing it this afternoon, it was like, no, this will be perfect. So here we are.
Here we are. And also, shout out to Billy Goat. For those of you who aren't aware of the Billy Goat, there's a little tight shot on the beer there. Cheeseburger, saying Saturday Night Live. A lot of people know for that. It's one of the best places to grab a burger in the city if you ever find yourself on Lower Wacker Drive for whatever reason. They got a nice little spot in the cut down there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, man, I didn't know they made an IPA. I usually have the Pilsner.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Digging into this one, it's crispy.
It's not bad, I feel like it feels like a session IPA. It's not like beat you over the head like
beat you over the head.
There's some chewy IPAs out there.
I love that description, a chewy IPA.
Yeah, and this is definitely not one of those. It's you can pound down on these a little bit.
All right. So are we? What do we got?
All right. So coming off the beer, and again trying to keep with some tradition that we've been playing around with on the show. I am going to lead in the next track with the shirt I'm wearing. So as you can see, I'm rocking the Falcon this afternoon.
The Falcon. Let's zoom in on this. The Falcon. Tell us about the Falcon.
All right. So they are a bit of a local super group, I guess, if you want to call it. So when they are not doing their day jobs, we've got Brendan Kelly and Neil Hennessy from the Lawrence Arms.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing vocals, guitar, drums. Then we've got Dan Andriano from Alkaline Trio. When they're not doing stuff, these guys rock out. And then we've got Todd Mahoney from Rise Against. So, like I said, good, solid pedigree. These guys are one of these bands that, like I said, they've got day jobs. So when they're not doing, their regular bands, sometimes this band bubbles up again. And
that's kind of cool.
Yeah. We had the pleasure of getting a new record from these guys in the end of 2016. They toured around a little bit in 2017. But, fans of local music know that the day job bands have got their new stuff out and they're out touring again. So it kind of went back into a little bit of a hibernation super recently. But I got a chance to see them a couple times last year, and they're always a good time out. So the next track we're going to listen to is off of their 2016 album, Gather Up the Chaps. And again, keeping with this strong emotional theme of the week, we're going to listen to a track called The Fighter, The Rube, and The Asshole.
Sounds good. Let's get into it. This is Falcon on Mild Sauce Radio. We're here with the Steve Breit Show.
Shut the fuck up, what you say is wrong. I don't even know what you mean. Get out of my head, that's right. I don't want you next to me at all. Let's end this night, one drink at a time. In this night, one drink at a time. saw her hanging out with that schmuck. Now I'm done, it's over, let's just stop. Get out of my head, that's right. I don't want you next to me at all. Let's end this night, one fifth at a time. Get out of my head, that's right. I don't want you next to me at all. Let's end this night, one fist at a time.
Meaningless like this one that seem magical in ways no one else can see, no one but me, as if I wasn't scared enough. And these days just won't change. These days, sick and sore, I swear I'll end it all. I know how to quit. I'm calling sick to everyone, and I'll be moving on. And these days just won't change. Forever doesn't look so good, and so forever I must try and think of ways, clean up my mess, unlock the door. Well, it's time for me to try to These days, long and uninspired, I feel empty and so tired. Nothing to show for what is now, just a lack of strength. And these days just won't change. Forever doesn't look so good, and so forever I must try and think of ways, clean up my mess, unlock the door. Well, it's time for me to try to leave, as if I wasn't scared enough, as if I wasn't scared enough. Where it ends, will it end? Will I ever control myself? Where it ends, will it end? Will I find my child?
All right, welcome back. We're at Mild Sauce Radio, Steve Breit Rock Discovery Show. It's Saturday at about, 3:20 in the afternoon here in the beautiful Windy City. We just played 3 songs from Chicago acts. The Falcon, that was the Fighter, the Rube, the Asshole. We also had double feature. You Speak, it reminds me of whenever you speak, it reminds me of Hiroshima. And then the last one you just heard was My Mess by Tuesday.
Yeah, so we were kind of bouncing all around in the eras right there. We had a little bit of the Falcon to start us off. Then we bounced into Double Feature, which another great local band that was off their 2016 self-titled album. And then we wrapped it up, swinging back around with a little bit more of Dan Andriano, his solo band before he joined Alkaline Trio. That was a band called Tuesday. And that goes back to about the mid-'90s, 96, 97, with a track called My Mess. So,
Damn.
kind of keeping in that strong emotion, keeping in that little bit more of that punk vibe for that last little bracket of songs.
Yeah, we were talking when everyone was listening to music, we were talking off air there a little bit about like the harmonizing that happens in double feature and how that kind of became a staple of West Coast punk. And you were telling us a little bit about like Bad Religion and like NoFX and a lot of stuff that happened out there. Like how important was that to like the development of that scene, or like where it is today, where double feature is still kind of like manifesting those pieces that started 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, coming from a Chicago perspective, we're in a nice position because, as with a lot of stuff with culture in America, be it fashion or music or, a lot of stuff, it's East Coast or West Coast driven. And then those influences bleed towards the center. And here we are in Chicago. So we get a nice mix of that East Coast, of that West Coast. But, speaking of early West Coast punk and where double feature kind of derives some of their influence, to me at least, you're getting a lot of that sound from the roots that go back to the early 80s with Bad Religion, with Epitaph Records, with the distinction of the West Coast punk sound as opposed to the East Coast with the more harmonized vocals, a little bit more melodic, not to say lighter or anything like that. But, with the East Coast, I think of the Cro-Mags, Agnostic Front, more angry, get your point out there, kind of shout it out, be proud of it, drop it, and then move on. West Coast, I think, it plays into a little bit of that Dick Dale surfer vibe. You get a groove,
they want to be heard,
you're in the California sun, you don't have to deal with seasons,
right.
So, Bad Religion was one of those first punk bands to really bring in like that harmonized chorus and the structure that we've been hearing and associate a lot with, the staples of the modern punk sound. And, that lineage goes from like Bad Religion to Epitaph Records, which they formed, and then all those bands that kind of spill out of it, you know what I mean? Like NoFX was a band that I think inspired a million other bands, and you can hear it in stuff that we played recently with like Bad Cop, which carries it on the West Coast to this day. Also, you hear it with, Double Feature, which we just heard. They're a great band, and they're just carrying on that great West Coast tradition of, that harmonized punk style.
Very dope. Yeah, learning something new every day here with you, Steve. So we just went through some of that. I know you're bringing. We're doing a sort of. You explain this a little bit. Explain our premise here.
Yeah,
of the episode
so the premise,
again.
Like I said, it's not just straight love songs, but it's
Right.
strong emotion songs.
So like you were talking to me about, a lot of songs where it's like somebody wrote a song about a bar that they really like or something like that. You told me like, so that's kind of the range we're playing in. It doesn't have to necessarily be a woman or a man or a person or a dog. It could be absolutely anything.
Absolutely, it could be a love song about a bar, which we might check out in a little bit.
Right. It's a day of passion here at the Steve Breit Rock Discovery Show.
Absolutely.
So what else you got? What do you got coming for us next, man?
Okay, so like I said, that last bracket, we had a nice little punk mix. We're going to shift gears a little bit. The next track, this is going to be a little bit of an odd, deep cut, meta, Chicago within Chicago thing. So the next track we're going to hear is by a band that was just created, I think, to record this one song.
So this is like a one and done situation.
Absolutely. So this is the Hardcore Cadaver Dog Sex Slaves. And now, this, to set this up.
I love you, Steve.
And again, going back in time a little bit, this band, if legend holds, is basically a side project of My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult. And they got together to do this song, which we're about to hear, called Tonight We Murder. And it is a cover song of an old Ministry track that was released on the 2005, I believe, Ministry tribute album. And this is going to kick off a little bit different era, a little bit different sound than we heard in the last bracket. So we'll check out these guys. Then we'll move into the early 2000s local scene with Tubbring. Then we'll dip back. Tubbring, yes, absolutely. We're going to check out God Hates Astronauts. And then after that, we're going to mellow it out a little bit with a artist called Sister Soleil. This was a Chicago artist that I had seen a long time ago, and she morphed very chameleon-like over the decades, and she's actually still performing in Chicago under the name Dub Witch. But this is off of her debut album from, back in the 90s. So
Blown away by all of these names. These are amazing.
So we're gonna be checking out another little bracket of songs, and like I said, this is gonna be a different vibe, but still that strong emotion.
So Tonight We Murder, before we get into this one,
Yep.
what is the love connotation here?
Well, it's the I think the opposite of love.
Okay, all right. So all right. I'm just trying to get the premise.
Absolutely,
All
it's
right.
it's a tenuous premise at best. I'll admit.
I'm just fucking with you, man. All right. Tonight We Murder. I'm by the hardcore cadaver sex slaves. Cadaver dog sex slaves.
There you go.
Jesus Christ. All right, here we go. All right, we're back. Sauce Radio, Steve Breit Rock Discovery Show. We're here. We're half an hour in. We're listening to music, playing music, checking out some new bands and everything. We just got into some weird shit, man. I don't know how I feel about everything we just listened to.
Yeah, definitely
You gotta
wanted
explain
to
it.
shift gears a little bit.
You shifted gears successfully.
Yep. So first, like I said before, we heard Tonight We Murder by the Hardcore Cadaver Dog Sex Slaves.
Right.
That's just like I said, that was a little bit meta. So that's a Chicago band covering another Chicago band and coming up with a funky name to do it.
Really getting circular on that one. All right.
Exactly. And then next up we heard Tub Ring. Now that was a band that, like 15 years ago was really popping off a lot around the city. I used to live around the corner from Fireside Bowl back when they used to put on, concerts instead of just bowling. Mm-hmm. And these guys, I've seen them there several times. They actually just came out with the greatest hits, and I believe they're recording new material. So
very cool.
If you like that stuff, check it out. That was, kind of going back into some sounds that you don't hear too often.
Yeah, hold on
anymore.
1 second. As we say that, I mean, when we talk about sounds you haven't heard too often, this is what we're talking about here. Kind of bizarre. Like,
Yeah, so
like Tub Ring is playing with some like weird vocal situation. All of them really, like you kind of could tell all throughout that there was a continuance of like vocal manipulation.
Mm-hmm,
I'm trying to talk like you now in rock show, but no, but there was like a vocal manipulation where it was like even Don Robb, who was sitting in on listening to the songs, was talking about how they're recording into like vocoders, or they're messing up their sound, or they're trying to like dirty it up as much as they can. What's like the why pair all these three together particularly, and like also like maybe explain like why don't you want people to hear what you're saying all the time?
So I think that last little bracket of music, to me at least, that was a little bit of a stretch that was hearkening back to the more electronic, industrial sound of Chicago in the end of the last century,
End of the last century, nice.
Yeah. So we're talking, this is right around the cusp of the century. So, Thrill Kill Cold, they'd been around in Chicago since the early 80s. They're covering a Ministry song from the 80s. So you're getting that old, hard Chicago industrial vibe out of that first song. The second song, Tub Ring, they're a little bit different in that they're following that John Zorn free jazz style that he really kind of made famous with bands like Mr. Bungle and Mike Patton, where to me, it's all kind of the school of Frank Zappa, where it's that, every song is going to have 8 different songs in it, Tub Ring was really into that sort of song structure. And like I said, I believe that record we heard was produced by one of the guys from Mr. Bungle. So you're getting that lineage. And that is taking rock, taking industrial. They were on Invisible Records, which was a big famous industrial label in Chicago that put out bands like Pigface in the 90s. And so you're getting a little bit of the remnants of that industrial with the distorted vocals with Tub Ring, but you're also moving into different genres with that disjointed free jazz style that Frank Zappa kind of created. And then finally, we move into Sister Soleil, and her early stuff was definitely tied to that 80s Chicago industrial scene, where I believe her early producers were the dudes in Dewarza, which was another Chicago industrial band. We might dip into them in a future episode. But, her early stuff was definitely tied into that Chicago industrial scene. Then in the early 2000s, I think she was trying to reinvent herself. So she went a little bit more solo, changed her name to Stella Soleil. Played around with that for several years, and then moved into the more electronic stuff that she does as Dub Witch now. And again, we might dip into that in a future episode. But that was a nice little dip back into some local music of 15 years ago or so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting. Would you say, like, the lot that's been said lately about, or been talked about with, hip hop and rap in Chicago and just like the community that's kind of been built around that in the last few years and yada, yada, yada. We've heard this story a million times by now. The 80s and like the early 90s, like this era that you talk about, you speak about often. It's obvious that it was like an important era to you as well. At that time, was it like what you've been talking about, the way, one guy from this band engineered this song and ended up on this label? It sounds like the community here at that time for industrial and rock music was like really, really tight knit. Can you speak to that? Like, I don't know how old you were at the time or anything like that.
Absolutely. I think,
what was that like?
There was, and it's something that, there's nothing, it doesn't exist anymore, in my opinion. But, you think back to the 80s and industrial music. I mean, the big bands like Nine Inch Nails and Ministry, that was that sound. But that stuff was going on years and years before in Chicago, and it's basically all because of Wax Trax Records. And they were so tenacious in that sound and bringing that vibe out that you had European bands, Austrian bands like Front 242 that would come, British bands like Meat Beat Manifesto would put stuff out on Wax Trax. So Chicago really became a hub of that electronic, it wasn't into the EDM, techno dance realm that it kind of evolved into the 90s, and it wasn't the very arty craft work European stuff. They made a very accessible sound that really blew up worldwide, but it was founded, or its roots were definitely at Wax Trax in Chicago, and a lot of the bands that we heard just recently have those roots in that that pedigree. You know what I mean? A lot of those acts would produce other acts, or support or bring the next generation up. So I think there was a good long stretch of a good 20 years when they really kind of had a strong presence in the city, where a lot of that stuff really all kind of was surrounded by that. You know what I mean? I think in the early 90s, Ministry really affected a lot of bands in the city, and you heard a lot of that throughout the mid 90s into the late 90s. And then, the passions change, interests change, and, that scene kind of recessed. And I'd say, not to be a hater or anything, but I haven't heard anything progressive or new coming out from that genre in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting to talk about, especially, as we're going through these different epics and eras of music happening in Chicago. You had the house stuff happened in Chicago. You had the first rap wave. You had this new rap wave. You had the rock in between. You had blues before all of it. So there's so much that's happened. It's interesting to look back and see how, what would you say is different about the rock scene today, or the community, I guess? Because the scene is different from the community, right? The scene is can get a little head ass about things, but when it's the community is the guys who are helping cut the record, the buddy that can do the art for you, the guy who has a studio, the guy, you know what I mean, that kind of thing. Have you seen that? Has that changed a lot? Is that maybe why you're not seeing as much I mean, Chicago rock is always going to be a thing. It's always going to be relevant. But is it why maybe rap's having its moment in the city?
Yeah.
And right before rap had its moment, of course, rock did. We're not sitting here trying to be political and say anything is one over the other. It's just a timing thing. But where do you see it now? How would you gauge what's happening today compared to what happened before? I mean, you've been really rocking with the scene for a minute, so you've kind of seen it ebb and flow a few times.
Yeah. I think in regards to that old industrial kind of scene in Chicago, as we talk about the ebb and the flow of taste in America, in society, I think people aren't really interested or putting out new progressive industrial stuff, but there is still a pulse in Chicago, and you don't really hear new stuff coming out of that genre very often. But Chicago is home of the Cold Waves Festival, which happens in the end of September, and that's a celebration of that old Chicago vibe. I mean, that's one of those festivals I hit every year. Just this last year, they do it in the end of September. Front 242 was the headliner again. I had mentioned them before. They were a Wax Trax band from Europe, but they're still coming to Chicago, and it's still a sold-out show in Chicago. I don't know if they can sustain that in Dubuque or Salt Lake City or whatever. But there's still a vibe and still a scene. Clubs have died away over the years. We lost the stalwart Neo a couple of years ago, but Smart Bar still exists and still plays this stuff. Exit still plays this stuff. You can hear it around in the city.
How important are like the venues? I mean, did you see a lot of venue kind of like when people talk about like the dinosaurs leaving? You know what I mean? Like the comet came and it blurred out the sky. And
the venues,
have you seen the way a scene might ebb and flow? Is it dictated by like the places the scene can go? Is it dictated more by like the people that are there? Like what do you? I mean, maybe this is like a really hard question too.
No, I mean, there's definitely community, and that community has grown smaller with the lack of interest over the years. But like I said, it still exists here, and it still kind of pulses up every once in a while. And you kind of were talking about that helping hand and bringing people up. Another one that I can think of more recently is the sound engineer Steve Albini. I mean,
sure.
he's been in Chicago as long as we've been alive, if not longer. He started Big Black. That was seminal Chicago punk.
But I mean, Steve Albini has done stuff for people across. Well,
exactly.
All
so he's done the Jesus Lizard, another Chicago stalwart. He's produced Nirvana. He's produced Chevelle. He's produced so many. And he would hate the term producer. He is the engineer, but. Another story that I think of, like I said, is a band called Bully. I believe they are St. Louis based.
Shout out St. Louis as always.
Absolutely.
In the house.
But like Bully is a band where the lead singer was a person who was interested in making beats for her friends to rap over. That was where her background was. And she was looking for a musical direction in life, hooked up with Steve Albini. He was a mentor for her, taught her everything she knows. And she then formed her own band called Bully. He produced that record, so it is bringing that, he was one of those guys, where if he sees talent, if he sees quality, he's going to bring it up, And that's another one of those ones where, he's still to this day is finding new talent and supportive of that and shouting it out to the world, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, not to switch gears at all, but like a friend of mine, Brandon Markel Holmes, who's just was featured on the latest Gorillaz album, got that opportunity. I'm pretty sure.
That's great, by the way.
Yeah, and he got that opportunity through Steve Albini, and I think he performed at the Bulls game the other night. Like, Brandon, shout out Brandon if you're watching or anything. But
shout out.
He's been doing great things, and it all I think it started from that idea, like exactly what you were just explaining. So I mean, that's just interesting. It's just something I've been meaning to ask you for a minute, but
and it's cool to hear that he's still relevant and he's still vibrant, and that's always cool to see in a city as big and robust as Chicago.
Right. I mean, you get the same thing with guys like shit, I'm messing up. Jeff Tweedy. I'm sorry. I'm like I was having a mental breakdown. Jeff Tweedy and Wilco. I mean, Jeff has been taking, his son Spencer, as well as Liam Cunningham, and a lot of those cats from like Kids These Days and Marrow and that whole little contingent out on the road, and giving them opportunities to, not even opportunities. I mean, they're great musicians. So he's like, actually, it probably benefits him as well to have those guys out there with him. But, they get to be on TV. They get to play bigger stages. I'm always a big proponent of being able to see something before you have to do it yourself, and I think like anytime, that's what's beautiful about Chicago right now, I think, is you got this whole people being able to get to a stage that maybe they're not ready for, but it's not their stage right now, and it's
cool.
okay.
I mean, it's cool at Wilco, because they've got their sound and their vibe, and Kids These Days they have it's not Wilco, but
Well, I mean, if you listen to the stuff they came out with after that, like very up that alley.
True.
Kids These Days was a little bit disparate. I mean, that was a lot of things being packed.
But no, I think that it's a cool corollary though, because it's one genre almost supporting another genre, because it's all One Love Chicago. It's all local.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of which, One Love Chicago, we got some more Chicago music to get into real quick.
Yep. So we're gonna bounce. We're gonna shift gears again a little bit. This is a band I think we brought up in the Anticipations episodes. This is a band called Breathing Light.
The Anticipations episodes.
So we're gonna hear "World Is Burning." It's not their most aggressive track, but you know it's a passionate track. So I felt it fit the vibe of the episode today.
Perfect. All right, let's check this one out. This
All
is World Is Burning by the Breathing Light. This is Steve Breit, Jake Krez. We're here on the Mild Sauce Radio, Steve Breit Rock Discovery Show.
Yep.
It's a mouthful, but we doing it. Check this one out.
When him and Mom would start to fight, well, he tried to drink each and every beer that 95th Street had so near, and he would prowl around the south side at night. But of all the places here that I've been, and anywhere around I've wandered in, oh, the Tomb and the Ginger's drunk as hell, and even the Ashford House as well. There's always one place that keeps me in. But you're always welcome at tea hands, any time of the year. And you're always welcome at tea hands, and I wish you were here. Well, Sean is stopping by to say hello, and Regis is in the back counting her dough, and Sue and Eileen are there, and the third one's on the house, I swear. And Linda's got your last shot before you go. Well, a resident philosopher is no, and soon enough it's 2 in time to go. Well, we're not done no friggin' way. It's back to the west side where I stayed at 4 o'clock. Bars that never close, and it's always welcome at tea hands. Oh, any time much anymore. Cause coming down each night from this high is a chore. And it's hard to go to work and it makes you slack off like a jerk. And I don't want any of my friends have to say no more. But there's only so much physically one can take. That's well when your stability starts to shake. So let's save a few for old age. Hit Chicago in a fucking rage and terrorize downtown with quite a lag. And it's always welcome empty hands. Oh, anytime of the year. And it's always welcome empty hands. And I wish you were here. Oh, I wish that you were here. I wish that you were here. I wish that you were here. And I wish you were here.
All right, we're back. We're back. Mild Sauce Radio. We just played a couple new joints for you real fast. Steve, what was that?
All right, so we switched it up again. A little whiplash coming out of that last bracket of songs, but we heard a couple tracks. The first one was Breathing Light, World is Burning, another song of passion. And then the last track that we just heard was The Tossers, a track called T-Hands. That was off of a Thick Records comp called Oil, Chicago Punk Redefined. It was a cool little compilation that came out in the mid-2000s, and it was Thick Records. They rented out space in a working oil refinery, and they brought in a whole bunch of up-and-coming Chicago punk bands at the time, and over the course of 2 weeks, recorded this entire record.
That sounds amazing. An oil refinery?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Now, the reason I have this track in the mix today, and this is the disappointment of my beer selection. Now, on the one hand, it's Beta Brow. You know what I mean? Southside, cool stuff. I was really looking for Southside Pride, specifically because of that last track we heard. So,
Hey.
T-Hands, the track, it's got a little bit of a special place in my heart. My parents live down on the south side in Tinley Park, and T-Hands is a bar that I used to frequent down there. So it was nice. It was, sticking with the theme of the week, Tossers. It's a love song to a bar that I used to frequent. So I can kind of relate. Down on the south side, so south side love.
Hey, shout out to Southside. Got some family down in Tinley Park as well. So also, World is Burning. Me and Sanal over here were talking while you took a step out, and man, this is album did not sound like. And he said you change up the vibe of the show. Like that one sounded like a rap record almost. That sounded like an R&B beat.
Yeah, Breathing Light. They are another local band. They are pretty eclectic, so you're going to hear some mellow stuff like that from them, but you're going to hear some heavy punk stuff. I was actually a little bit torn on what track of theirs I wanted to play today. It was either this song or another song called Confusion, which is a very aggressive punk song. So
Okay, all right. Well, shit. Like, apparently
we should definitely feature them on another episode. Like I said, you get a nice variety out of their creativity. Similar again to another local band that we talked to about in the Anticipation episodes, Limp Wrist.
Right.
Remember how we heard, they've got a little bit more of that more upbeat dancey stuff, but then they've got more of that hardcore punk stuff. So
it seems is that kind of like a very Chicago aspect of bands like that? It seems like the city kind of almost calls for you to have a little bit of each.
Maybe it's the city, maybe it's the vibe of the city.
Mm-hmm.
It's big enough that there's enough room for that openness in your sound.
Right, like you could find a venue for everything, kind of thing. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's interesting.
Yeah. But that was a nice little South Side break.
A Southside break.
And then this next bracket of tracks, it kind of leans back a little bit. We're gonna hear some new stuff. We're gonna hear some old stuff. We're gonna hear some mid-2000s stuff. This dips back a little bit into that Chicago industrial heritage.
Okay, so like what we were talking about before with like. Help me out.
Like Wax Trax Records.
Right, yeah.
And all that stuff.
I've been here all morning, I'm sorry.
So we're going to, in this next little selection of songs I've got queued up for you guys, We're going to hear Blame and Demand off of the debut record from Damage Manual.
Okay.
Okay, this came out in mid-2000s. It is a project that is led up by a guy called Chris Connolly. And again, this is a dude that has been in Chicago music circles for decades. He had a solo career. He was initially in a British, I believe, Scottish band called Feeney Tribe.
Feeney Tribe.
Feeney Tribe back in the
Sounds
80s.
like
They were
Boy Meets World, like cult or some shit. The Feeney Tribe.
you know, they were a band again that, you know, you listen to this music and how it evolves over the years. They were an industrial band. That's what drew Chris to Chicago.
Okay.
I believe after he split off that band, it evolved into a more dance, electronic, techno vibe band.
Okay.
Got a little bit more upbeat. But Chris, like I said, he came to Chicago because of Wax Trax. He was involved in ministry. He was one of the singers on many of their seminal albums. He was, like I said, he's got a solo career, several solo albums, several big solo tracks that were, you know, XRT radio staples at one point in the in the city's past.
Yeah.
And then he was also a big part of Pigface, which again ties back into another track we'll hear a little bit later. But, you know, Chris Connolly, local music staple. The next track we're going to hear is a new track, or relatively new, by a local band called Tanzin.
Okay.
And then we're going to finish it out with the aforementioned Pigface off of their Fook album.
All right. So first off, we got Blade by Tanzin.
No, we're going to do
What's the first one?
Blame and Demand.
Oh, excuse me. I got it.
Good deal.
I got it right here. All right. Mild Sauce Radio, the Steve Breit Rock Discovery Show. This is Blame and Demand by the Damage Manual.
We have been worthless. We demand.
Ignorance is bliss, as dangerous as kindness. The show
All right, we're back. Mild Sauce Radio. We're hanging out doing the Steve Breit Rock Discovery Show. This is Steve Breit. I'm Jay Krez. This is Mild Sauce Radio. Blah 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 blah. So that was Insemination by Pigface, and Steve was just telling me that when you went to a Pigface show back in the day, you knew you were at a Pigface show. Explain that for the people, man.
Absolutely, and it's I think last year was an anniversary of theirs, so they were putting on some shows that I was not fortunate enough to see. I was not in town for that, but again, these loose connections through Chicago DNA of genres and people and labels and all of that. Pigface grew out of Ministry's touring band when Ministry was done with their tour and back in Chicago. The band didn't, they had nothing better to do, so they started their...
Shout out to Bruce Dumpster. Once a show.
Live on Saturdays. But no, where was I? So these guys, it was something to do when Ministry wasn't touring, and it ended up being this major collaboration between, disparate groups. I think Martin Atkins, the original drummer from Public Image Limited, the British band that Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols formed after they broke up. He was one of the founding members. You had people from Ministry, Revolting Cocks, Nine Inch Nails, Jesus Lizard.
So it was just like a collective band.
Yeah.
Like whoever was available at the time type thing to hop out.
It was a collaboration, you know what I mean? So you'd have, Trent Reznor would come in and sing a song. Lead singer from Skinny Puppy would come in and do a little bit of work. I think John Frusciante from the Red Hot Chili Peppers was in the band for a little bit, I think members from Shonen Knife, the Japanese band, were involved with these guys. So it was
literally just like everybody.
Yeah, and whenever you saw them, you didn't know who was going to be on stage with them, but you knew it was going to be a ridiculous party. So that was dipping back, probably some of the oldest stuff that we heard this afternoon. I think that was off of their 1992 release, Fook.
Before most of our viewers were alive.
Exactly. But this is Chicago music history. And
no, it really is. I mean, trust me, I've been learning a ton. That's why the Saturdays are so much fun for me. I get the opportunity to sit here and learn about all this stuff. But we also listened to Blame and Demand by the Damage Manual, and we checked out Blade by Tanzan.
Yep.
A lot of the bands you're talking about today, I've kind of noticed as well. I feel like a lot of times you test me to see if I'm noticing the trends you're bringing up. But the one that I've noticed is a lot of these seem to be compilation bands or bands, super groups like you mentioned. Is there part of that about does that tie back to your tenuous passion premise?
It has nothing to do with that tenuous passion, but I think it does speak to the diversity and the coolness of this city and all the stuff that goes on. Like I said, a lot of the bands we're hearing today, they're super groups out of not necessity, but you know what I mean? It's there's so many cool bands in Chicago, and there's so many vibrant musicians who just want to, put that stuff out there, that when, their day jobs aren't touring or recording, they're artists and they have to art, So
they have to art, man.
They're getting together and they're doing new stuff, and that's a cool legacy that continues to this day, regardless of genre. You're seeing that in hip hop, you're seeing that in rock, you're seeing that all over the place.
Yeah, and I think you see it more and more as the walls come down and things become more easier, more I don't know what I'm saying. They're easier to touch, easier to get through. There's less barriers around everybody to make things happen. You got a SoundCloud, you can upload your music, so you don't necessarily need a label. So I feel like all that makes for a completely open playing ground for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's dope, man. I mean, we've been so far. We're an hour in.
Yep.
Been going steady today. Finishing off these Billy Goat IPAs.
Yeah, like I said, man, they're easy drinking.
They are, man.
Killing a few.
Yeah, I was gonna say it doesn't even feel like you drink that many, but they're going down pretty easy.
Yep.
Shout out Billy Goat once again.
And Beta Bra.
So we got one. Oh well.
All right.
I was gonna segue, but Steve's got a story he's got to share. He's got to get something off his chest. It plays into the next song, which I'll give you a little foreshadowing of the story that's about to come up. The name of the song is "Where Violence Is Golden."
Yep.
I'll give it to you, Steve.
So Where Violence is Golden. Again, this dips back into another century, another era of Chicago music. And this is a band, again, with roots with Wax Trax. They're a band called the Electric Hellfire Club. They are an offshoot band from Thrill Kill Cult. So this is a long time ago. I saw these guys several times around the city, different bars, different clubs. They never really blew up that major. They were always pretty underground. But I put this song in, and I put this song last specifically because, you know, we're talking about passion, whether it be good or bad or, you know, what have you. But I saw these guys once at the Exit. And this is a long time ago, and it was like a Tuesday night show, midweek show. So we get to the Exit around 9 o'clock or so, and if you have, you know, if you've been there,
those of you not familiar with the Exit, Tuesdays and Thursdays are a little bit different.
Well, this might have predated that, but you know,
okay.
I think, you know, if you've been out there, you know, that's a late night bar. That place doesn't really pop off until, you know, 11, 12 o'clock, you know. So we were there to see a show, and I think we got there like 9:30. So it's pretty empty in there, and empty enough for us to, you know, pony up to the bar, and we're waiting for the set to start. So we're downstairs. Show's going to go on upstairs. So me and my buddies, we pony up to the bar, we order our beers, and we're sitting there chilling and just killing time, talking. And as we're sitting there, this giant fucking mountain of a man walks into the bar. You know, I'm a little over 6 foot myself, and
I was gonna say, like, for you to call someone a mountain of a man is like,
yeah, he towered over me. I mean, he was at least 6'6", 6'7", long hair, leather pants, leather vest. You know, the whole Sons of Anarchy, like, you know what I mean? That whole vibe.
2 feet down, yeah.
But you know, he's not alone, so he's walking in with his lady. And like I said, he was pretty striking. We noticed him as he walks in, and then we noticed the fine woman accompanying him, and she is dressed in lingerie, you know, like a teddy, lacy thing. I don't know, you know, negligee, not street clothes. Lingerie situation. You know, the full deal. Garter belt with the stockings, high boots, dog collar around her neck, and a chain, and he's carrying her in, you know. So he comes in, sits down next to us, and he sits down, and his lady friend promptly sits down on the floor. So I was like, "Who?
Is that on the floor?"
Yeah.
Okay.
So, oh, it's gonna be this kind of Tuesday night.
I love that you have like a thing for when you see that.
Right. So, you know, waitress comes by and, you know, walks up to the guy. "Oh, what can I get you, sir?" He orders whatever, you know, some sort of drink. And without skipping a beat, the woman just like bends over to the floor where this woman is sitting. And "What can I get you, ma'am?" And she orders a drink as if there's, you know, as if it's completely normal.
Right.
And you know, they get their drink. She comes by, gives them their drinks. And
she give it to her in like a glass?
Yeah, in a glass.
Okay,
in a glass.
All right.
And you know, they go about their business, and like I said, you know, this is Chicago. You're gonna see crazy stuff. You're gonna see stuff that you're not gonna see in Dubuque or, you know, Poughkeepsie.
Well, definitely not in Dubuque. Yeah.
And you know, so that's that. You know, I don't really put much more thought into it. And, you know, me and my friends go back to our conversation.
Yeah, like, cool, fuck it, all right.
Yeah, whatever. And you know, time goes by. Set time's about to begin, so we go upstairs. We're there to see the Electric Hellfire Club. So they come on, they do their set, and totally, I guess, normal, you know, concert or show or set that you'd see at the Exit, you know.
Sure.
And they get to their last song, and the last song is a track that we're going to be hearing, so you can contextualize this.
You're giving us a visualization.
Yeah, exactly. So, like I said, it was a pretty well-sold show. There's a large crowd. The band's on the stage. They're singing. And the song we're about to hear, you know, there is a sample of a whip in the song. In the song itself. So, you know, being good performers, they want to bring this to life live. So as the show's going, lead singer grabs a whip and just starts,
like, off stage, like,
a bullwhip, a full bullwhip, and just starts whipping out into the crowd, and immediately a semicircle
Yeah,
forms.
did somebody get
Everybody
hit?
backs the fuck up. Yeah, people got hit. People got hit, and then they immediately back up into a semicircle.
As you would if you got hit by a bullwhip at a show.
Exactly. Directly out of range of, this guy whipping. And he's going about his business, and the band's in full tilt, and he's whipping and enjoying life and just not, he's in the moment. And out of nowhere, in 2018, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere, the fucking mountain of meat, the fucking comes out from the back of the crowd, from the shadows with his woman. He throws her into the fucking front.
He threw her in the front.
Threw her in the front.
He was like, he got up. He threw her in the front.
No, he walked, split the crowd like
The
biblical
fucking Red
style.
Sea or some shit. Jesus Christ.
And down his woman goes, and she ran in there, and for the entirety of the remainder of the song, every time, and you'll hear it, every time you hear that whip, this singer was whipping the shit out of this guy's girlfriend or lady friend.
That's insane.
Wait. And she didn't move. I mean,
they were like both enjoying this. Like,
and that's the thing,
Me Too's like, you gotta be a little
this,
sensitive here. This was not a domestic abuse situation.
Absolutely.
Was
it's definitely very prescient, and especially what's going on now, and
the new 50 Shades of Grey movies coming out.
Yeah, that timed a little weird with the prescient news of the day.
Right,
But anyway,
Jesus.
that was that odd thing where like you're sitting there and like he throws this chick in the crowd, and the lead singer like immediately starts whipping the shit out of her, and she's down with it. She ran around, squealed like a pig, but did not leave. She took it all. So this is the diversity of Chicago, and this was before the Thursday night bondage night that you see a lot more at the exit these days.
Right. I mean, I've seen some shit at the exit on Thursdays, but I mean, that's just that like the fact that it was like a live band, like a live performance.
Yeah, that was just
his head just went for it, like.
And I think this was pre-social media era, so you know what I mean. Like
So
I don't
you
know
could get away
if
for some shit like that back then.
Well,
Yeah,
like I would if I saw that today, I would suspect that like, oh, that was planned, and that they hyped it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that too. I didn't even think about that.
For the social capture on Instagram or whatever.
I don't even know, man. That would have some eyebrows raised, I think. But shit,
But
that's
yeah,
a
like
hell
I
of a
said, it
intro to the
was
song.
definitely before the era of like, oh, I'm gonna be taped, so I'm gonna ham it up or act it up,
and
for
that's
the
why
camera.
we looked up 90s fails at work.
Yeah.
For those of you out there, if you're looking for a good fail, they didn't know they were being filmed in the 90s, so it was way more funny. All right, man. That was an insane introduction for this song.
Yeah, so take it or leave it. I mean, to each his own. And like I said, bondage night is a thing at the exit these days.
Thursday nights at the exit, everybody get out there and see somebody get whipped.
Well, now shit. I mean, this day and age, whipping is tame.
Dude, yeah. Let's not get into that, man. I seen like a guy get his face stepped on in high heels and shit. It was weird. It was creepy. And
Yeah.
All right, man. This has been the Steve Breit.
You know what? All right,
I'm
before
just messing around.
no, definitely an interesting way to wrap up an episode.
I didn't know where to go from that one.
But I wanted to give two shout outs real quick. So Tanzan, the band that we heard just recently with their track Blade, they had just played Friday night, last night. Didn't get a chance to see them, but I wanted to give them an additional shout out. There playing the Degent Fest on March 2nd. So if you dug that, you can catch them on March 2nd. And then additionally, the Tossers. They are playing at the Metro on St. Patty's Day, of course. So if you like that, be sure to check them out. And then we will wrap this week's episode up with the Electric Hellfire Club, and we're going to be hitting you with some crazy new shit next week.
Absolutely, man. Thank you again, Steve, for coming out and dropping off all this new music and old music and giving us this like whole understanding of rock in Chicago, man. This has been the Steve Breit Rock Discovery Show. I'm Jake Krez. This is your host, Steve Breit.
Take care.
And we'll be back again next week. Right now, we got Where Violence is Golden by the Electric Hellfire Club.
Take care.
All right.